kind of invoice. So first we'll start with the simple manual standard invoice. Invoices, entry, invoices. So here you can see there are different kinds of invoices. Standard invoice, debit memo, credit memo, expense report, prepayment, retainage release, withholding tax, and mixed invoice. We'll start with the first one, standard invoice. A simple invoice like wherein you purchase something from a vendor for a stationery of say 50,000 rupees and from the ABC vendor, and you got a invoice from the vendor. So you are recording that particular invoice in AP module because you need to make a payment of that 50,000 rupees to the vendor. So in R12 we have got a new field here, operating unit. So this is actually now grayed out because as far as this particular operating unit is concerned, payable super user Reliance postpaid, there is only one operating unit which is assigned, and that is coming here. If you remember during GL also I mentioned like through a single responsibility you can do a data entry or you can do a reporting of multiple ledgers. Similarly in AP also, if required, we can do a data entry of multiple operating units through a single responsibility if you assign something called MO security profile. So if you have assign MO security profile, MO security profile is similar to ledger set in GL. What is ledger set in GL? Can you recap me?
It's like a list of ledgers that come under that ledger set.
Exactly. So ledger set is a group of ledgers. Similarly, MO security profile is a group of operating units. So you can group these two operating units. If we have completed all those what do you call your financial options, payable system options for Reliance prepaid, then what we can do is we can create one MO security profile wherein we can group this Reliance postpaid and Reliance prepaid and assign that MO security profile to this responsibility. And once we do that, here in the operating unit field will not be grayed out. You can put your cursor here and you can click on the drop down, and in the drop down you should be able to select Reliance postpaid or Reliance prepaid. So in any organization like wherein especially maybe a corporate office, they'll have an access to enter transactions for all the operating units across the country. Okay, so for those kind of people, maybe there'll be a new responsibility which will be created, something like payable super user Reliance all operating units or something like that. So that could be the naming convention. Okay, now trading partner is nothing but vendor. So what is my vendor? Select a vendor. So here again, this particular screen, you will be able to see all the vendors available in the system, whether they have got a supplier site or not. If you select any vendor who do not have a supplier site, then let's see what will happen. So try to pick up. Oh, it's showing only those vendors. I believe it should show all the vendors, and when you go to the next tab, supplier site, it will show that there are no supplier site. Anyways, okay. Pick up ABC vendor. And supplier number is auto generated because in the payable system setup we have mentioned that supplier number should be auto generated, and when you are defining a supplier number is auto generated, and supplier site. Okay, so looks like it has automatically defaulted to ABC Ahmedabad, but we have two operating unit two supplier site, but why it has defaulted only one site? Any guess? And it is not even showing me the other operating unit, sorry, other address. Can we go and double check? Okay, scroll down. Their name is ABC vendor. Okay, so we got Reliance ABC Hyderabad and ABC Ahmedabad, and both are under Reliance postpaid. So I'm just trying to check why it is not showing the ABC Hyderabad in the drop down. Manage sites. Okay, let me check these two here. Okay, So this purchasing and pay checkbox was not checked for the EPC Hyderabad. That's the reason why it's not. As I said, that if you do not check this checkbox of purchasing and pay, then it will not be available during a data entry. Now it should be available. Okay, we'll also check this primary pay. I don't think so that is required. That's fine. Okay. See now ABC Ahmedabad and ABC Hyderabad both are available in the drop down. Okay. What we'll do is we'll complete the state and postcode details also for the Ahmedabad. And also we'll use a proper naming convention ABC. Okay. In the address book, we'll try to update this. Okay. So both are in proper init caps. And for ABC Ahmedabad, we will enter the state Gujarat, and I don't know postcode. I don't know what it is. 400050. Okay. Now go back to this invoices screen. Invoices ABC supplied site. Yeah. Now you can see the entire address details. Okay. So we can go for ABC Ahmedabad. What is the invoice date? So what is the date on which you receive what is the date which is appearing on the invoice? So let us assume that we have received the invoice today and the date on the invoice is say 24th of September. Okay. So you get a message. The date you entered is not in an open accounting period. So similar to GL, like wherein once your ledger is completed, you open the accounting period. So we have got an accounting period even for the subledgers also. So before you start with your data entry, ensure that you need to open the accounting period. Then only you'll be able to proceed further. Okay. Accounting control payables period. Okay. So scroll down. So what is your period? September. So say open. Now go to the data entry, invoices, ABC vendor, supplier site, Ahmedabad, 24th September. So this is the invoice date. And what is the invoice number? So invoice number is, again, you can see the copy of the invoice, and in the invoice number, whatever the number which is generated on the invoice copy, enter that number. So let us assume it is ABC 100. And what is the currency? Currency is, invoice currency is INR. So it is defaulted from the supplier side. In the when you are defining a supplier side, there is something called invoice currency and payment currency. So there we have mentioned INR. So it is defaulting here. If you want, you can click on the drop down and you can change it to some other currency, whatever you want. Okay. And what is the invoice amount? So what is the amount which is mentioned on the invoice? So let us assume that we received an invoice from the ABC vendor for 50,000 rupees. So we are purchasing a stationery from ABC vendor for 50,000 rupees. Okay. So that's the header part. And GL date. GL date is defaulted to 24th of September. So do you remember like what is the GL date base, whatever we have mentioned in the payable options?
System date.
We have mentioned it as system date. So that is the reason it is defaulting to 24th of September. But if you have, there is other base of invoice date also. And if you have mentioned it as invoice date, so in this example, it will be same 24th. But if you have selected there as an invoice date base, and if you have entered the invoice date as 23rd of September, then GL date will be 23rd of September. Okay. and the payment currency is also defaulted from your supplier side. So you cannot have invoice currency and payment currency different. So if the invoice currency is INR, your payment currency will be same. So if you click on drop down, it will not allow you to change them. That makes sense too. When you have generated, when the vendor has generated an invoice in one particular currency, he is expecting you to make the payment in the same currency. Okay, and payment rate date. What is the exchange rate which you want to use? So again, this date is also defaulted based on the setup in the financial options or payable options. And then what else? What is the match action? Invoice match action. If you want to use the matching with your purchase order, what is my invoice match option? Whether it's a two-way or three-way. If it is a two-way, then it's a purchase order. If it is a three-way, receipt. And again, in our payable options, we have mentioned that my invoice match option should be receipt. So that is the reason that is defaulted. And these fields like project, task, expenditure, item date, expenditure type, and expenditure organization, these have got a significance from the project accounting module. So if you use the project accounting module, then these things will be enabled and you can enter that. Once you enter your project number, these things will be enabled. I don't think so we'll be able to see anything because we have not set up project accounting for our operating unit. And what is the term date? Okay, what is the date which I want to payment terms is 30 net, and terms date is what is the date from which I want to start calculating the payment terms. So 30 days from 24th of September. And the payment method, I don't know, a payment method somebody has defaulted a supplier or supplier side with something else. So payment method should be, so I mean most of these are actually custom ones, somebody has created that. Otherwise in general the payment method will be check, electronic or wire. We'll go with the payment method of check. So all these are custom payment methods which are created by different users in this particular testing environment. But otherwise Oracle provided payment methods are check, electronic or wire. And again this pay group of default standard is actually defaulted from your supplier side, and for the supplier side it is defaulted from your payable options. Okay, now go to the lines. So in 11i we have got only called, we have something called invoice headers and invoice distributions, but in R12 we have got one more layer, invoice header, invoice lines and invoice distribution. Okay, so in invoice line level again we mentioned like 50 for 50,000. If you want you can break into two different lines or you can have only one line. So we'll go with only one line, or maybe we'll go for two lines. So for 50,000, so maybe 30,000 is the one line, and say 20,000 is the another line. So whether you want to go for one line or more than one line depends on all other fields whatever is mentioned here. If the PO number, if it's a purchase order based invoice, if the PO number and line number is different for these two line items, then it will be two lines. Otherwise it could be only one line. And also the account code combination. If you want to have a different account code combination for 30,000 and different account code combination for 20,000. When I say account code combination, expense account code combination. So for 30,000, you want to enter 30,000 is say stationery account and 20,000 is some other account you want to use, the expense account. So it could be some stationery. I don't think so there is any stationery, so there is no stationery account. And let us see what are the other expense accounts available. So all these natural accounts are coming from the segment value screen, whatever we have defined earlier. So there is something called documentation fee. Maybe we'll go with that. Maybe we are paying some documentation fee to this particular ABC vendor. And the next 20,000 is some other fee, maybe consulting fee. I saw something called consulting fee. Okay. So here we got two lines. Okay. Each line has got one distribution. So you can enter the distribution account in this screen here, or you can click on distributions and you can enter the distributions accounts also. Similarly, for this particular line, you can click on distributions and you can enter the distributions. And you can click on all distributions, which will show the distributions for two lines. Okay. So here you can see at a high level, invoice is the 50,000. There is no withholding tax. There is no tax, freight or something like that. Okay. Amount paid is 0 because we have not yet paid this invoice. And the status is never validated. The invoice status is never validated. So we have not yet validated the invoice. So as we have entered all the required details, now what you need to do is you need to validate this invoice. So as I mentioned earlier, either you need to do an online validation. If you remember, we have checked the checkbox of allow online validation in the payable options. If you check the checkbox, then system will allow you to do an online validation. When I say online validations, click on actions, click on this validate invoice button or validate button. So this particular checkbox is enabled because we have allowed online validation in my payable options. If you have not allowed that, then this will be disabled and the only option left for you would be to run the invoice validation program. So if you run your invoice validation program, I mean in a real world, that is what most of the customers do. They will run the invoice validation program. When they run the invoice validation program, then it will try to validate all the invoices which are in a never validated status. Okay. Now in this case, we'll try to validate the invoice. Now you can see it is a never validated status. Now click on validate and let's see what will happen. Okay, now it has changed to validated status. Okay, and as we are not using an approval functionality, it says approval is not required. If you are using an approval functionality, once the invoice is validated, then you need to submit it for approval, initiate approval. Okay, this is the checkbox. And there is something called force approval also. If you enable the force approval again in the payable options, then system will allow you to bypass the approval workflow and directly approve from the screen itself. Again, we should be careful before enabling that particular checkbox. So in one of the client, whatever I have seen is approval is enabled. So everybody will be able to see only this particular checkbox. But there are some couple of super user responsibility wherein they have this force approval checkbox. The force approval is not grayed out. So they did some kind of a form personalization wherein for all the responsibilities, this particular force approval will be disabled. But for one responsibility, that will be enabled, and that will be the super user. So in a worst come worst scenario during a period end, if the users are not able to submit the invoices for approval, or if they do not have time, they will ask the super user to bypass the workflow by checking this force approval checkbox.
Arvind, how we can see that whether this invoice is approval workflow is using or not? How we can control it?
I'll show you that. So first thing is in the payable options, setup options. Where did we see that? Use approval workflow. This checkbox is unchecked. As we have unchecked this particular checkbox, what has happened is whenever you are creating an invoice. So I'm bringing up my invoice. Automatically the approval status will be not required. If you enable that particular checkbox, approval status will say as required, and then you need to go to actions and click on this initiate approval. Then it will go for the approval workflow, and once it is approved, there will be a system generated notification which is sent to your approver, and once the approver approves that, once you come back to this particular screen, you will be able to see the status as approved. Did I answer your question?
Yes, Arvind.
Okay. Okay, now it is validated. Approval is not required, so that's fine. We can proceed further. We can even make a payment of this invoice, or we can do an accounting for this particular invoice. If you want to do an accounting, again we can run a create accounting program, or you can do an accounting directly from the screen. Actions, create accounting. So there are three different options available here: draft accounting, final accounting, and final post accounting. So even when you run your create accounting program also, we will have these three options: draft, final, and final post. Okay, what is the significance of these three options? Again, it is a very good feature available in R12. We do not have this particular feature in 11a, especially whenever there are the SLA rule customization. This feature is very good. We are actually using this particular feature in our current client, because we have got a lot of SLA customizations. Okay, so when you say create accounting in a draft mode, okay, click on OK. What will happen? See, accounting has been successfully created for this particular transaction. Now the accounting status changes. Still it shows accounted as no, because it is still a draft accounting. What you can do is, if you want to see the accounting entry, so what is accounting entry? Can anybody tell me what is accounting entry?
The expense account will be debited and the liability account is credited with the lines.
Exactly. So now the account, once you view the accounting entry, the expense account, that is the accounts which are mentioned in the AP charge accounts, this will be debited, and the liability account will be credited. So from where exactly we are getting the liability account?
Financial options.
In one way, yes, but we should say that is coming from the supplier
Side also.
Yeah, because
Yeah,
like
supplier
from
side.
financial options, it defaulted to supplier side, and from supplier side, it is defaulted to invoice. So in supplier side, if you have made some changes to the default to whatever is being defaulted from the financial option, then the updated one will be appearing in the invoice. Okay, go to reports, view accounting. Okay, so here there are a couple of lines. You may be confused as to why I got so many different lines. So here you can see, as we have enabled the as I mentioned earlier, that whenever you do a create accounting in the primary ledger, or whenever you do a create accounting in subledger, it will try to send the data to both primary as well as the secondary ledger. So in this case, for INR ledger, we have got a secondary ledger. So hence you can see the accounting entries for the primary as well as the secondary. Okay, first we'll concentrate only on the primary part. Okay, so I'll first concentrate only on these three lines. So the accounting entry is item expense account debit 30,000, item expense account debit 20,000, because there are two expense accounts, 4501 and 4130 in our AP invoice, and liability account is credited with 50,000. Similarly, for the secondary ledger also, okay, the same expense account is debited, the same expense account is debited, and liability account is credited. Okay, if you want to see the accounting entry in detail, again you can click on view journal entries. So it's a different way wherein you can see the accounting entry. Okay, and once this particular accounting entry is transferred to GL, okay, you should be able to even see that particular GL batch name also here. GL batch name and general entry name. Once the accounting entry is transferred, we are not able to see here because we have not yet transferred to general ledger. Okay, now coming back to the status of accounting. So this is in a draft mode. So the reason why Oracle is provided as a draft mode is, in the draft mode you can look at the accounting entry, and if everything looks fine, then again run the create accounting in the final mode. But if you feel that, oh no, I think I should not have used this particular account, I should have used something else. Okay, or I want to change something else, then you can go back to your invoice, make the changes, run the create accounting in the final mode. Okay.
So Arvind, at this stage, the journal is not created, right?
It is in a draft mode. It is not yet created. It is in draft mode.
No, is it created and not posted, or it's not even created?
Okay, so first of all, it is not even transferred to GL, so there is no accounting entry in GL. Okay, within AP, it is still in a draft mode. So if you ask me in technical terms, the entry is created, entry is available in the SLA tables with the status of draft. But only once it is final, then only your ledger gets updated, or your accounting reports get updated. Whenever you run your account analysis report or your financial reports or whatever it is, it gets updated only in a final mode. So draft mode is still in a draft mode. So if you feel that you want to make some changes, you can go ahead and make some changes. But draft mode is still in a draft mode. It is not yet updating your balances.
Okay.
Okay. See, it is in a draft mode. Okay. Now I can go here and make some changes. So I realized that no, I should not have used 4501. I should have used something else. Okay. Now go back here. I want to change this 4501 to something else. I want to use 4501 to 4140 training. Save this. Okay. Now try to run the accounting once again. Create accounting. Okay. As you have made some changes, the invoice has gone to needs revalidation status. Whenever once invoice is validated, there are certain things which you can still change. So there are different things, like once invoice is validated, certain things are grayed out. You cannot make any changes, but certain things you can still change. Once it is accounted finally, there are certain things which you cannot even change. So now this is in validated status. Earlier it was invalidated, so these are all grayed out. But still it allowed us to make some changes to the accounting because it is not yet accounted. Now we have made some changes. Now we'll try to validate this invoice, run in a final accounting mode, and then come back to this particular screen. Then system will not even allow you to make changes to the accounting lines also. Okay. Validate this once again. It is validated. Now try to run accounting in the final mode. Accounting has been successfully created for this transaction. Now you should be able to see the status as accounted. Okay. Now check the accounting entry. Now you should be able to see the updated accounting entry. Okay. I think this is the old one. What is the updated account which you have used? We have 4140. It is final accounted. Let me close other screen. Why is that it's still showing 4501, the old one? Did we do an accounting in final mode? Accounted is yes. Okay, put your cursor here. Do we need to requery this? Let me requery this. Okay. Now reports view accounting. Okay, I need to check why, but otherwise, see, it is still showing 4501. It should not show 4501. It should show the updated one, whatever we have entered here. I mean, that is the significance of the final accounting. So let me go back to this view journal entry. It is showing final. So if it is showing final, then ideally it should show the updated account, whatever we have mentioned there. Okay. Hang on. I think I got it.
Can you go to distributions?
Exactly. So I made a mistake that it is still showing 45. I should have actually made the change at the lowest level, that is at the distribution level, not here. Okay. So that is the reason why it is showing 4501. Okay, one sec. Here I can see 4510. If I go to the distributions, it is 45001. So I think ideally I should have changed at the lowest level, which is 45 here. But I did the change here, so that is the reason why system is still looking for the account at this level, which makes sense. Okay. Now the other point is, as I had completed the accounting in a final mode, you can see it is grayed out. So whether you look at this particular level or this level, it is grayed out. No. See, it is grayed out ideally. See, it is grayed out. Okay. So that is the significance of the final accounting. If you run in a draft mode, if you verify, and if you think you want to make some changes, run in a draft mode, verify that, and then if required, make the changes, and then run in the final mode. If you do not want to get into all those stuff, just run in the final mode. And there is one more option called final post. Okay, what is the difference between final mode and final post? if you say in final mode, it is running an create accounting program, or internet is doing an accounting for the invoice, and the data is still lying in the AP. It is not sending it to GL. So in order to send it to GL, you need to run a separate program called transfer entries to general ledger program. And in single shot, you want to do an accounting in AP, and as well as you want to transfer it to GL, then you need to use the final post program. So final post will do an accounting in AP, send it to GL, and it will also post the journal entry in GL. Okay, so in the current case, we have run in final mode. So that means it has accounted, but it has not transferred to GL. So if you go to this reports, view accounting, go to view journal entry, expand this, you are still not able to see the batch name or journal entry name because it is not a transfer to GL. Now we will try to run the transfer journal entries program. View, request, submit new request, transfer journal entries to GL. What is the ledger? And what is the end date? 24th September. Post in general ledger, say yes.
What is the end date?
End date is the date up to which you want to pick up all the entries. So if I say end date of 24th of September, whatever the entries which are available up to 20, there is nothing called from date. So it is going to pick up all the entries available in the system for this particular ledger, okay, which are not transferred to GL, and it is going to pull those entries and then transfer it to GL. If I put an end date of say 30th of September, that is end of the month. Now it is going to pull up all the accounting, all the invoices which are accounted but not transferred to GL, which has got a GL date as on or before 30th of September. It is going to pull those entries and transfer it to GL.
Okay.
So generally these particular programs are scheduled to run overnight. So whenever you schedule this particular program, you just put that end date as the system date, and then you increment that particular date, so that tomorrow whenever the program is running, it will run for with the date of 25th of September, and day after tomorrow 26th of September, and so on. I hope everybody know like increment date parameter checkbox. I can show you that. So let us assume I want to schedule this particular program to run daily. Maybe this will be the benefit of Rohit. So there is an option called schedule. You can click on schedule and you can say you want to run this particular program once at one particular point in time or periodically, that is daily. So you can say rerun every day and rerun at daily at 11 a.m. And there is a what you call checkbox called increment date parameters. If you check the checkbox of increment date parameters, today when it is running, it will run with a date of 24th of September. Tomorrow it will automatically run with an end date of 25th of September. Next day 26th of September, and so on. Increment the date parameters each run. The name itself says you are incrementing the date parameter for every run.
Hey, one thing, Arvind, when the invoice is accounted in the final
Mode.
final option, final mode, right? The data is in the interface table, GL interface table.
No. Data is not in the data is not GL in the interface table. Data is still only in the AP table. It is not yet even sent to GL.
Okay, it's only in the SLA tables.
Yes. Remember, in R12 there is slight change in 11i. Whenever you are running a create accounting program or the equivalent create accounting program in 11i, I think it's transferred to GL or something like that. So whenever you run that accounting job, or sorry, payable accounting process in 11i. So whenever you are running that particular process, it is doing an accounting and transferring it to GL. And if there are any issues with the GL, so the account code combination is disabled or GL date is closed or something like that, it is getting stuck in the GL interface table. That's in 11i. But now the good functionality in R12 is whenever you run your create accounting, when it is sending it to GL, when there are some issues in the GL, either the period is closed or some other issues, it will totally roll back. It will not even put the data in your GL interface. It will directly roll back to your SLA tables. Okay, and in the create accounting, it will give you an appropriate error message, correct the error message, rerun the create accounting program, then it will go to your directly your GL. So in an ideal world, you should not be able to see the data stuck in the GL interface for the subledgers.
Okay, yeah. So the question is, like, let's say since it is in a final mode and the data lies in the SLA table, right? SLA model.
Okay.
Do I have an option of revert back and do some other corrections?
No, once it is in final accounted, system will not allow you to make any changes to the what you call accounting entry. If you remember, like in the invoice, I have shown you, like once I ran in the draft mode. So even in the SLA tables, whenever you do an accounting, the data is stored in the SLA tables, and in the SLA tables there is a flag. As long as the flag is in a draft status, it will allow you to make some changes to the invoice. If it is in final status, which is F, then it will not allow you to make any changes to the what you call the
Invoice.
accounting entry in the invoice.
Okay. Okay.
Arvind, continue to that question, Arvind. SLA table, you are referring to the AP table, AP tables, or XLA AE headers and XLA AE?
XLA AE headers and XLA AE lines. Okay, I'll just give you a little background on that. So in 11i, whenever an invoice is created, the data is stored in AP invoices all, which are base table, AP invoices all, AP invoice distributions. Okay, and then once you run your payable accounting process or your create accounting in AP, then the data directly go to your GL base tables, which is nothing but GLJE batches, GLJE headers, and GLJE lines. Now in R12, we have got one more layer called SLA layer. So the data, instead of going directly from AP to GL, it is in between. Now we have got one more layer called SLA tables, and they start with XLA. So the data gets stored in XLA AE headers, XLA AE lines, and there are some other tables. We'll not get into those details. So there is a interim layer in the in between your subledger as well as the general ledger. The reason for this particular interim layer is this interim layer is actually the accounting entries are getting created in this interim layer based on your subledger accounting rules, SLA rules. So in your AP invoice distribution, so if you take in this example, let me go back to my invoice. What is our invoice number? ABC 100. Okay, so this is the expense account whatever we have entered in your AP invoice distribution. So if you do not do any customization, pretty straightforward, whatever is entered in your AP invoice distribution will be these expense accounts will be debited and liability account will be created, which is pretty straightforward. If you make any changes to your SLA rules, even though in the screen you can see this, okay, I can explain that better in Excel. Okay, first scenario, there is no SLA customization. Okay, then so this account will be debited with 30,000 rupees. This account is okay. Sorry, I think the other way. This is 20,000 and this is 30,000. Okay, and the liability account. So what was the liability account? Okay, so this is the straight away accounting entry which you can see in AP forms. So in the AP forms you can see these are the expense lines and this is the liability line, and in the SLA you can see this is the accounting entry. So these two are debited and this is credited because there is no SLA customization. So whatever you can see in SLA lines, so this is what goes to your GL. Let us assume if you have made some changes to your SLA. So the changes to the SLA would be something like the rule can be anything. The rule could be something like what could I say? Yeah, if my vendor is ABC vendor, and if I use if it's the vendor is ABC supplier and the supplier side is ABC Ahmedabad, and whenever even the user uses a account of 4130 consulting account, I instead of taking it to 4130, I want to take it to say 4131. Then what will happen is the accounting entry in SLA will be, I'm just making up some rule. Okay. So what will happen in the AP invoice distribution, you can still see it as 4130, 4501, but in the SLA, because of the SLA create accounting program when you run, that's where your create accounting program is going to read your SLA rules. And based on the SLA rules, so system will generate this particular accounting entry and this will be flown to your GL. So this particular data will be lying in your SLA tables and the same thing will go to GL. Whatever you can see in your SLA will go to your GL. But if you are running some reports based on if you are running some custom reports which is pulling the data from this AP invoice distribution, then that will not be matching with your SLA and that will not be matching with the data which is being actually accounted. So always, so even we have faced a similar issue in our current client wherein there are a lot of custom reports which are written in 11a wherein it is pulling up the data from the AP invoice distribution, and we have done a lot of SLA customization. So after performing those SLA customizations, so ideally we should actually make the changes to all those 11A custom programs after upgrading, so that the data should be read from the SLA tables, not from the your original AP invoice distributions table. In 11A, that is fine because we do not have kind of an SLA layer. But whereas in Artable, we have got an SLA layer, and wherein if you are using a customization, then you need to ensure that all your custom reports reads the data from the SLA tables, not from the AP invoice distributions all or AP invoice all table. Does it make sense?
Okay, Arif, as you mentioned that the XLA tables will be populated when you are trying to create an invoice or validate, and which event the SLA tables will be impacted.
Okay, SLA tables will get updated when you run your create accounting. Until unless you run your create accounting, SLA tables will not be updated. Whether you customize SLA rules or you do not customize SLA rule, unless or until you run your create accounting, your SLA rules will not be updated. So in the invoice, you validate your invoice, do not run your create accounting, then go to your reports and view accounting, then you will say no data form, because that particular view, when you click on reports and view accounting, it is reading the data from your SLA tables, and there is no data in the SLA tables because you have not yet ran create accounting for that particular invoice.
So you mean to say that whatever the draft mode that is there, still that lies into the AP tables, not into the SLA, even in the draft mode, and you are trying to make any changes only in the subledger, not at the subledger accounting level.
I think you are mixing up a couple of things. You are mixing up draft accounting. You are mixing up SLA customizations. Okay. First thing is, as far as the draft mode is concerned, okay, even for the draft mode also it will look for your SLA rules, custom SLA rules, and then it will generate the rules. But as far as the draft mode is concerned, the status of the accounting status in the table will be draft here, and if you run in a final mode, the status will be final. Okay. Ideally, if the status is in a draft mode, okay, your standard reports which is pulling the data from your SLA tables will not pull that particular data. Generally, your account analysis report, your accounts payable trial balance report, your trial balance report, and other reports will not pull the data from your SLA tables if it is in a draft mode, because there is a flag. Only once it is in a final mode, then it will pull the data from these SLA tables. So that's the first thing. And the next thing is with regard to your SLA, custom SLA rules, whether you run your create accounting program in draft mode or final mode, when it is, as it is trying to run accounting, at that stage, it is going to check your SLA rules. If there are any custom SLA rules, then it will read that. So in this example, if there is a custom SLA rule, even in the draft mode, the entry would have been something like this. Got it?
Yes. Now I understand the difference. I got it.
Okay. So what we'll do is we'll create one more invoice. Okay. If you want to do a shortcut, just do a Shift F6, which is going to copy all the values same as that of your above row. Just change only the invoice number, because invoice number is unique. You cannot use the same invoice number. If you try to use the same invoice number, it will throw an error message. Try to save it, to throw an error message. This value already exists. Okay, so try to change the invoice number. Change the invoice number to 101. Okay, I'm creating one more invoice for say same say now in this example now I'll create for 25,000. Okay. Now try to create one invoice line and go to distribution and enter a account. Save. Okay, you save this. Okay. Now it is not validated. Try to validate and do not do an accounting and check the view accounting. It is validated. It is not accounted. Now put your cursor here. Click on reports. See, view accounting itself is disabled here. So that means it's not even allowing you to go to that particular accounting page because it is not yet accounted. Okay. Now try to run in draft mode. Accounting has been successfully created for this transaction. So you can see as you are running in a draft mode, it says accounted is no because it is not final accounted. Only once it is final accounted, you can see accounted status as yes. Okay. Now put your cursor here, click on reports view accounting. So now you can see some data. This is coming from the SLA tables, but with a flag of draft. So if you want to know whether it's a final accounted or draft accounted, you can click on view journal entry. Here you can see the status is draft. Again, there are a couple of again one of the production support issue which I can say. There is one particular user. He did not realize that he ran in a draft mode. Okay, he went to this accounting entry. He saw the accounting entry. He says that accounting entry is available, but how come system is showing an accounted as no? Because he did not even observe that he ran in draft mode, and he did not observe this particular journal entry status. Then we showed to him that you need to look for this particular journal entry status. It clearly says it's a draft. So as long as it is in a draft, the accounted status will be no. Only once it is final, then you can see accounted status as yes, and that's when your reports get impacted. And there is another user, another production support issue, another user who ran in a draft mode, and then he ran some account analysis report, and it says that it's not pulling up. And he in the ticket he has given this particular screenshot that I can see an accounting entry here, but it is not pulling up pulling up in the report. So when we got into the analysis, we found that journal entry status is draft, accounted status is no, and hence it is not coming up in the report. Okay, then we ask the user to run in a final mode. Actions, create accounting. Now this time we'll directly do in final post mode. That is
before that, and Arvind, if you do without a validating, just if you run the draft mode also, it will become validated.
no. Only once validated, then only system will allow you to do an accounting. Unless until invoice is validated, it will not even allow you to do an accounting for the invoice.
But in this case, did we validate this invoice previously?
Yeah, that's the reason you can see validate. Okay. So what you can do is you can I mean maybe as part of your practice you can create one more invoice. Do not validate and try to see whether system will allow you to do an accounting. It will not allow because this particular entire part will be grayed out.
Okay.
So now in this case, accounted. Now I want to do in final mode. Create accounting, final post mode. Accounting has been successfully created for this transaction. And one more catch is like whenever there is an issue, when the system is trying to create an accounting, okay, and when there is an issue, here what it will do is it will throw a message saying that online accounting cannot be performed. Please run create accounting program for further details. So what will happen is if there are any errors because of which system is not able to do an accounting in the screen, unfortunately Oracle is not providing that entire error message here. It is asking us to run the create accounting program, and in the create accounting program go to the view output, and in the view output it will be able to see the entire error message. The reason being that error message in sometimes it could be a very big wherein they will not be able to show it in the form. So that is the reason why they are asking us to go to the create accounting program, run the create accounting program, and in the output you should be able to see the actual error message. Okay, now in this case it is final accounted. You can see accounted as yes. Reports, view accounting. Click on view journal entry. Accounted journal entry status is final. Okay, now expand this. See here you can see batch name. This is the journal entry batch name and the journal entry name. If you go to GL, okay, and pick up this particular general batch name, you should be able to see this accounting entry, whatever we can see here. Okay. Now go to General Ledger Super User Reliance INR. Journals, enter, copy your batch name. What happened? It's not coming up. Okay. So what has happened is, maybe I think I use some extra space or something like that. Anyways, that's the batch name. Okay, I can see the batch and it is already trying to post, because when you are running a final post mode, it is trying to create accounting entry, transfer to GL, and as well as posting. So it is already now trying to post. Okay, now it is already posted. Okay, now click on review journal entry. So this is the accounting entry. So this is the expense account which is debited, liability account credited. And from GL, you can click on line drill down. It will take you to the invoice screen. So we'll close all other screens. Okay, now you are in GL. Okay, click on line drill down. Okay, when you click on line drill down, it's not coming up. Okay, there is a reason for that. Okay, I'll explain it. So whenever you transfer it to GL, okay, within the subledger, I have shown you, like within the subledger, you can click on view journal entry. You'll be able to see the enter journal entry, and you should be able to see the corresponding GL batch name. Okay, that is drilling down from kind of AP to the corresponding GL details. And from GL, you can directly go to your AP. Okay, you can put your cursor here and click on line drill down, and this functionality is available even in 11a. Okay, and in this case, when you click on line drill down, it is not showing up anything. Ideally, it should show and the accounting entry, and there will be another button called view transaction. When I click on view transaction, it should take me to the original AP invoice, but it is not coming up. The reason being, there is a profile option which we need to assign it to the general ledger. And now we'll see what is that profile option. General ledger super user, Reliance INR. So as you know, like when we have created what do you call GL responsibility, we have assigned some profile options. We'll go back to that. Okay. So for general ledger supervisor Reliance INR, we have assigned a profile option of Reliance INR ledger, but we did not assign any profile option of MO operating unit. So in order to use the drill down functionality, generally the data is stored in GL at a ledger level. So you did not assign any MO operating unit or MO security profile options. But in order to use the line drill down functionality, because when you click on line drill down, it is taking you to the corresponding subledger. So as you know that subledger data is stored at the operating unit level. So when you click on line drill down, if you want to use the corresponding subledger AP invoice, you need to associate even the MO operating profile option also to general ledger. So if somebody asks you a question, why should I assign a MO operating unit to a GL when the data is stored at a ledger level if you want to use the line drill down functionality? Again, this is also one of our issue, like when we have upgraded from 11A to R12, we did not assign this MO operating unit because that is not required in 11A. And then ultimately when we did our research, we found that in order to use the line drill down functionality, it is mandatory that we need to assign even the MO operating unit profile option also. Okay. And what is my Reliance as a profile option? Reliance postpaid. That is the operating unit, right? Okay, now I'll ask you a question. So your data is at a GL ledger level. Okay, so we have got only one responsibility, general ledger super user, Reliance INR ledger, to which the two legal entities are assigned. Under two legal entities, there are 4 operating units, these two and these two. Okay, now under MO operating unit, I am assigning only Reliance postpaid. So what if, like in tomorrow, I create one invoice under Reliance prepaid, I transfer it to GL, it will come to the same INR ledger. Then if I do a line drill down, then system, I will not be able to do a drill down of Reliance prepaid invoices. Then what is the solution for that? Because at MO operating unit, I can assign only one operating unit.
MO security profile.
Exactly. So the solution for that would be MO security profile. So you need to group all those 4 operating unit into something called MO security, and then you need to associate under MO security profile. So if you assign any value under MO security profile, then system will ignore if there is any value under MO operating unit or not. Okay. So in this case, for the time being, we'll go ahead with only MO operating unit. Okay. We have associated this. Okay. Now go back to general ledger. Okay. Click on review journal entry. Put your cursor here. Click on line drill down. So let me close all previous screens. Okay. Here now you can see a line. Okay. Click on view transaction. Okay. It is taking you to the base invoice. So that's why if somebody asks you a question like looking at a GL, what is my corresponding AP invoice for that particular GL invoice line, then you can click on line drill down, click on view transaction. It will take you to the corresponding AP invoice workbench. So again, in this particular screen, you can only just view. You cannot make any changes here. So all other buttons, actions and other buttons are actually disabled here. So from a GL responsibility, you are giving an access to the user to check the corresponding AP invoice. Okay. So that's how you can use the drill down functionality when you are for any subledger invoice. So it's the same concept applies even for the AR related also. For the AR related transactions, you click on line drill down, then it will take you to the corresponding AR invoice. So if you have created an AR invoice under Reliance Postpaid, then it will take you to the corresponding AR invoice. Similarly, for AP payment or AR reset also the same thing. When you click on line drill down and click on view transaction, as long as that MO operating unit or MO security profile options are assigned to the responsibility, it will take you to the corresponding transaction. It could be an AP invoice or AP payment, or it could be an AR invoice or AR payment. Again, within the invoices, it could be a standard invoice, debit memo, credit memo, whatever it is. Okay.